What's going on, people, and welcome back to another one today. Interesting one today, a new idea I've had. It's a bit using the player versus player format, but in a different way. And it is past football versus modern football. Probably not going to go back any later than the 90s because I didn't really watch football before the 90s. So to give a fair comparison, I'm going to stick to the 90s and the noughties upwards up to current modern day football. I'm going to go through certain categories and give my opinion on them both and which one I prefer for past versus modern football. So we have quite a few categories, so this will probably be a bit of a longer video than usual. I'm excited to do it. So first up, I've got characters in terms of players and even managers if you want to put them in there, but I've got managers as a separate category. So characters in terms of players, I'll be honest, I think nowadays it's very rare that you get footballers that speak their mind and you can kind of relate to a lot of them. Whereas back in the day, I feel like there was more kind of workman-like, even though they were on good money back then, you kind of felt a bit more of a relationship with players and in interviews and stuff as well. So, and I just think now you don't really get a lot of characters in the game, whether it's through fear, they don't want to ruin their career, or they're scared to say certain things because they feel that like, they'd be cancelled. And I get all that, but it's a shame to see that football's gone that way. It's very rare when you see player interviews now that they're actually authentic and you can tell that they haven't been media trained. Cole Palmer is one of the few that I love to watch in interviews because he just doesn't care, and I love that, and I think the game's missing it. And you think back in the day of players like Roy Keane wouldn't hold back in interviews, Paul Gascoigne with his antics and jokes and banter, like you could list them off in past football. Nowadays you just don't get that. If a lot of them are media trained, the majority of them are, and it's just the same boring answers and just not exciting interviews. So I think it's a huge problem in the game, and it drives people away as well because I feel like people are craving that freedom of speech that seems to be getting less and less. So characters, I'm going to give it to past because I think it was a lot better back in the day. Next up, we've got managers, which is why I didn't include them in that bit. But similar to the characters, I feel like you look at people like Mourinho, who I know is still managing, but even he's been kind of tamed in certain aspects. Ferguson's the massive one that stands out in my head. The amount of times that he's banned people from press conferences and just speaked his mind in interviews and wouldn't hold back. That, like I said, Roy Keane, even though he's not a manager, he did have a little glimpse of it. Even people like Wenger, who had a bit more of a calm persona, had his moments. Have a few still in there nowadays, the likes of a Conte and stuff, but they're few and far between nowadays again. But like a Pep, who, as good as he is and tactical and like a genius he is, he's not really a character like that. You see him now and again lose his temper a bit, but not in terms of like interviews and things. And I just think the game's missing it. So I think managers, in terms of that, the overall quality, I feel like it's a lot more system based now. There's a lot of people trying to play Pep football. Most of them can't do it. And I think it's overcomplicating the game when football should be a pretty simple game at times, or a lot of the time. You have still got good managers about, but I feel like the character side of it is definitely lacking, and they're not giving enough freedom to players in teams, most managers, which I don't like either. So managers, again, there is a few sprinkled about nowadays that are good, but I'm going to give it to the past managers again. Excuse my squeaky chair, by the way, but every time I slightly move, it's just creaking. Apologies for that. Strikers, I think this is easily a no-brainer. Like, not just me, but when you hear pretty much anyone talk about strikers, even if you don't go back to the 70s and 80s and stuff, the 90s into the noughties, we were filled with world-class strikers. The options were endless. Think of England, the amount of options they had for tournaments and quality players having to be dropped and not making squads because it was that much depth in the striking position. You think of like Owen, Fowler, Andy Cole, Shearer, Michael Owen, Les Ferdinand, Kevin Phillips. Like, it was endless. And nowadays you're struggling to find a lot in one league, let alone around Europe. Obviously do have a few sprinkled in there, the likes of a Harry Kane. Windowski not so much, but a little bit before he was doing it. Gyökeres, Haaland obviously, but there's really not the amount that there used to be, especially in the depth department and the actual quality of strikers. A lot of teams now playing with wide attackers that are kind of chipping in with the goals to help out who is supposed to be the number 9. But you're not seeing the numbers really apart from your Haalands and your Kanes, that a lot of players were putting up back in the day. Maybe not to them levels, but more consistently throughout season per season. The quality of strikers and names and just depth is just not there now. I think it is a shame. So strikers, again, I'm giving it to the past football. I think it's night and day now compared to how it used to be. And not in a good way. Next up, we've got kits. You get some sprinkled in nowadays that are good. Obviously, you've got more technology going into kits now in terms of like a bit more streamlined and lighter and to help performance. But I feel like you get a lot of the same templates for kits now, whereas back in the day, you'd have it for a few teams that would have the same template, but it wasn't like overwhelming with that. Whereas I think nowadays they've got a bit lazy with it. On top of that, you've got like some teams have got 3 or 4 kits, even 5 some teams, which is horrendous. The price of kits is a joke. And I'm a fan of kits, but like I said, I do like some of the modern kits, but the prices of them are just driving people away as well, which drives people to get fake shirts. It's just a shame. It shouldn't be like that. Let's not forget, football comes from a working class background back in the day. And it's totally the opposite of that now for fans and people that want to get merchandise and memorabilia and stuff that they haven't always got the access to because of the pricing. But in terms of the actual design and stuff of kits, even though they were a lot baggier, I preferred it back in the day. Like I said, you've got less templates throughout kits that teams would use and copy. I feel like there was more time and effort put into kits in terms of different designs and more unique designs, and I preferred the bagginess of it, even though some of it was a bit extreme with the bagginess. I don't like these kits nowadays that are so tight and streamlined, and I get it helps with performance, but I don't think it looks better. So kits, I'm going past as well. Next up, we've got entertainment factor. You don't get it in a huge volume nowadays, I don't think. I feel like the quality of player overall is better if you go team per team compared to how it used to be in terms of like technical ability, speed, power, things like that. But in terms of actually enjoying the games when you watch them, I feel like it's too systematic, it's too system based, it's too tactical, it's too overcomplicated. Again, just overcomplicating it, and I don't think it's helping the game in terms of sitting down and watching a game and being excited. You're lacking the characters, as I said earlier on. It's too systematic. You haven't got enough freedom for players to be expressive, and I think the game has been harmed because of that. And there shouldn't be an excuse for that nowadays with the amount of money that's involved in football, that it should be less entertaining. They're putting on a lot of pre-show things now, and America's coming into it a bit more, and you're seeing that side of it. But I'm not a massive fan of that anyway. It's kind of losing a little bit of its culture in that aspect of things, and I don't like it. So I think the entertainment is not there like it used to be. Unfortunately, I would go past again on that. Equipment, this is actually going to go into the modern side of things for me. Things like cones, you got also the VAR, the technology with that. I'm not a fan of VAR, but it's more so on the fact that if it was used correctly, I would be. But they make too many mistakes with it. It takes too long. It's taking even longer now to get to decisions when it should be faster. There's still a grey area in terms of where they're drawing the lines and things like that. In terms of training facilities and things like that, though, and the youth academies and the money invested into that throughout the football, different tiers of football, I think is hugely improved. So I would go modern wise for equipment and favourite in terms of modern, because they have got a lot more now. The things like the vests that track players' heart rates and things and performance. I do think it hurts a little bit as well, because they're not allowing players to just push through injuries and stuff like they used to would have. But that's not always a bad thing. But I feel like nowadays there's too many players that are wrapped in cotton wool and it's affecting their careers, whereas they should be getting on with it and knuckling down and playing, in my opinion. But I think overall the equipment side of things is a lot better now, so I would go modern for that. Flair players, kind of going back into that not so much the characters, but like the freedom, the entertainment side of things. You think of back in the day, people like Ginola, Ronaldinho, R9. I mean, we've had like Messi and Ronaldo and Hazard, and you do get some sprinkled in again, but because of how systematic things are now, players aren't encouraged to be them flair players. You see it rarer and rarer now, and it's sad because you're taking enjoyment and that freedom and an entertainment value out of the game that is now actually telling players as well in coming up through youth football that if you're a young player, you can't be like that and you can't express yourself like you should be allowed to do and should be able to, because a lot of these flair players, when we were growing up and back in the day, were deciding games and changing games. And when you're needing them now, they're very rarely there because managers and coaches and higher ups in football aren't allowing these people to express themselves. They should be, because it is if you look back on it and back in the day, people like your Ronaldinhos, your R9s, your Messis, your Ronaldos were changing games. And now it's like discouraged and looked on as a bad thing, and it really shouldn't be. So flair players, I don't feel like you see anywhere near enough of them nowadays, which is sad. I feel like the talent's there to have flair players, but they're being discouraged and you're not seeing it because of that. So yeah, passed for that. It could be worked on. Unfortunately, it's not right now. Stadiums, I know it's your preference and what you think, but I'm not a fan of the new stadiums. They might be bigger, they might be able to hold more, the facilities might be better, but I feel like it's going too Americanized. It's going too entertainment in terms of not on the pitch and things like aesthetics, whereas you're losing that history and culture with football again, getting rid of all the old stadiums. I'm not an Arsenal fan. I've been a fan of their players over the years, but I miss Highbury, and I'm a United fan, but I miss grounds like that. Tottenham's new stadium, yes, it's done well, but they seem to be more popular on selling tickets for concerts than they do for football. Old Trafford is a mess and they need to update it. But we're now going to lose Old Trafford. I don't want that. You're losing history and all the players, like the history that's there and that working class environment. You're just wiping it away. People like Bobby Charlton, the Busby Babes, like that's all going because people are modernising where they could be just adding to past stadiums, improving them, refurbishing them, and you're not losing that character in history and culture. I think it's sad. I don't like the modern stadiums in a whole. I think some of them look nice and that, but you're losing the character and the history. It's not acceptable for me. So I'd go with past for stadiums, I've got to be honest. Coverage in terms of access to games. When I was growing up, you had a lot of access on BBC, ITV, Champions League nights. Even though you had the things like Sky and that, it didn't seem to be astronomical prices like it is now, even for that, and BT, and it's just going out the window in terms of prices. Fans can't enjoy the game now because they can't afford to have all these subscriptions to different platforms. Even when you subscribe to them, like they're adding things on top that you got to do to then get access to them, even though you should already have access to them. You're just robbing people of money, and it's disgusting, and it's getting worse. I miss ITV football with the Champions League nights. I don't know why they can't do that, even if they sprinkle in a few games and have the majority still on subscription-based platforms. There's no excuse for it, but it's greed, unfortunately. It's people running it that always aren't football people, and just people trying to rob people. And even though you've got more access to football now, it's not always accessible because people can't always afford it. So I don't think it's a good thing. If the prices were lower, it would be, but they're not. So for me, you got to go with the past for coverage. Tournaments, I feel like there's almost too much now in terms of tournaments. They're on about upping the numbers of teams in like the Euros and World Cups, and the Champions League. It's changed format. More so on the international scene, I feel like I'm not a fan of adding this amount of teams and stuff in because I feel like it lowers the quality of football overall. It's making it easier for the bigger nations to get through because you're adding more teams that aren't up to that level. And I just don't feel like the tournaments now, like, you're getting too much emphasis on people that are too, like, they don't want to offend people, and you can't make an advert about this because people might get offended, or you can't make a joke about this because people will get offended. And the pre-time shows and that, I just think it's going, like I said, it's going too much more to the American side of things than it used to be. I don't feel like enough countries having their own take on things. A lot of the celebrities and that, they're getting to do halftime shows and that is just, and pre-shows. I want to just get to the game. Even if it's on telly and you're not there and you're watching it, you don't want to sit through hours and hours of people talking crap, which is what it is. And a lot of it I don't even watch because I don't find it entertaining. So I'm going to go past in terms of past tournaments. I think you had better players overall, less teams that weren't good enough to make it easier for the bigger nations. So I'm going past for tournaments. Adverts, clear no-brainer. You have a few nowadays that you see pop up that look okay. They don't have the character of like the Jogo Bonito adverts, the old school World Cup adverts, the likes of the airport one with the Nike and the Brazil team, and the cage football with like inside that structure when you had the scorpion ball with the mirrored ball and like Figo, Rui Costa, Rivaldo, Roberto Carlos, these types of players, and the Ronaldinho advert with the Tiempos and the crossbar, and the Pepsi ones are a big one that I still remember. Still see Pepsi doing the adverts, but now you've got the women brushed into it, which I don't like. I don't care if you get offended with that. Like, I feel like they should stick to their own game and not being like forced into ours. Not a fan of it. I feel like it's lazy now. Some of the Bellingham ones, I feel like there's been maybe one good one with him, but I think they're forcing it, and I don't think you get the adverts you used to. So I'm going with a pass for adverts. Referees, look, they might have more qualifications now. You might have to go through a more stricter process to become a ref at this level, but you can see with the VAR stuff, the amount of stuff they get wrong, and they have more assistance with that, and they still can't get it right a lot of the time. And you have all these extra people in like a VAR hub somewhere, like headquarters, and people in different rooms in their ear. But you see the amount of times that you see problems with things like battery packs and stuff running out during games, which waste so much time. And you think football used to survive without this, and now it's like it's forced that we can't ever go back, when it's not really working how it is. So, but in terms of actual referees and the quality of them, I think it was night and day back in the day. I think you might have had more people that players didn't get on with, but there was more of an authority. There was more of players knew they couldn't cross certain people. Yes, they're still getting booked nowadays for maybe like mouthing off and stuff, but I don't feel players have got the fear that they had in certain referees back in the day. And I think that's a problem. And I don't think you get enough referees now that are more willing to speak out, because they're going to get punished for it. And I don't like that. So I'm going to go past for referees. Next up, we've got technology. I was just touching on the battery packs and the mics, the headsets for the refs, the linesmen, the VAR people in a different location in their headquarters. But it's taking twice as long, if not longer, to get to decisions now, when it should be even quicker than it was before VAR got brought in, and it's gone the opposite way. We're not getting answers from referees after games and controversial decisions when it's clear, or it should be clear, that you can't question it, you can't pull up referees on it. You're not getting in after match interviews with referees like I think you should be. I don't think they have to answer to enough that they should. And they do get a lot of abuse, but I also think they don't get scrutinised enough and called out enough in terms of after matches where there's been controversial decisions. They're rarely fined, they're never really questioned, and it just gets brushed under the rug, and I don't like it. So technology, as much as there's a lot there now, I don't always feel like I don't think it's made the game better in a lot of ways, because I don't think they're using it in the right ways that they should be. So it's a difficult one, this one. You could argue modern for the quickness of things in terms of outside of VAR, but VAR is a massive part of it now, and I think it's ruining the game. So I'm actually going to go for the past on technology. It was simpler, but it was more effective, and it was quicker. And that's a problem when it should be the opposite now, and it's not. Money, I think, has ruined the game. It's helped the game in terms of a lot of people worldwide are more aware of teams that they might not have been back in the day, because of things like advertising and maybe more access to games in certain countries. Other countries have it free, whereas we don't, which is another problem as well. There's a lot more money in the game, which is good for the game in terms of getting brands and teams and players out there and more eyes on the game. But then you're getting more eyes on the game, but then you're getting more eyes on the game for things like VAR that's going up the wall. So I think it's ruined the game personally, so I'm going to go past for money, even though there's a lot more of it. They're not using it right. Passion, easily. I still think you get a lot of passion from players and fans and that, but I feel like people nowadays are more interested to just get players on their phones I saw yesterday in a game, the United-Everton pre-season game, someone come out to take a throw-in, and there was a row of people on like bar stools, just all of them with their phones and like looking at each other like, yeah, you're getting this, instead of just enjoying the moment. And this is a big problem now. I feel like obviously there is still a lot of passion there, and there is a lot of loyal fan bases there still. But a lot of people, I think, are in it now for the wrong reasons, for the likes of just to get players on their phone to try and get more clips and more clicks on their channels. And also, you're not allowed to get away with much now, which in some cases is good. But when you can't go to a lot of stadiums and have things like standing places and standing areas, that's a massive problem. The phones, I'm not a fan of in terms of just not enjoying the moment. I get it if you want to take a picture, but most of these people are like waiting for the moment and just recording like a whole game when you could be watching it and you're there. I don't think it's what it was, so I'm going to go past for that. And lastly, for this one, we've got loyalty in terms of players and managers. I feel like managers haven't got as much of a say because teams and owners aren't giving them enough time, in my opinion, to get their philosophies in place and get results and have enough time, really. I think a lot of clubs are going wrong with that because they're then bringing in more managers on a consistent basis, but not giving them enough time. And then they're just going through more and more managers and nothing's improving because they're always worried about the money side of things and results more than giving your team time. I mean, look at Ferguson. He took a lot of time when he came in at United in the 80s to stamp his authority and change the philosophy of the team and bring players in and take players out. And he had time. And managers did more so back in the day. Nowadays, it's too extreme the other way, I feel like. I feel like most managers don't get enough time and they're out. And then you're bringing in more managers that still, they're not getting enough time and they're out. And you're in this conveyor belt of managers that don't have enough time. And I don't see how the owners don't see that, other than just looking at the financial side of things and panicking. Like, surely you want to give it a bit more time and find diamonds in the dirt, and you might find a new Mourinho, you might find a new Ferguson, but a lot of them aren't giving their clubs a chance in terms of the owners, not even giving themselves a chance to profit in the long run because it's based on short term now, more than ever. And that's because of the money. But I think it's hurting the game because you're not getting the managers to do a good enough job because they're not given a chance to. Going on to players for loyalty, I think it's a mess. You look at all the recent stuff with Garnacho with United, Isak situation at the moment, wanting to leave Newcastle after just winning the cup. I feel like there's too much player power. There's too much agents involved in players personally now. And they have too much power over, like, their agents they're in their players' ears too much. The players have too much confidence in terms of talking back to managers and trying to force things and not turning up to training, but not necessarily getting fined for it and not getting punished for it enough like they would have done. Like, you think a lot of the players, what they're doing now, especially with the likes of a Garnacho at United, that wouldn't have been allowed back in the day when Ferguson was there. Mourinho as well, he wouldn't allow it. And I think agents and players have too much power now, and the owners are letting them do that as well and not punishing them enough and not giving the managers enough power to come down on them when they're trying to do things that they shouldn't be allowed to do. Because you're on a certain amount of money, it seems like it's okay. What sort of message is that sending in terms of global football anyway, but to the youth as well, coming up and potentially becoming professional footballers in the future? You're putting a message out there that it's okay to act like a brat. It's okay to throw your toys out the pram and demand money that you're probably lucky to be on the wage you're on, and you're demanding stuff that you're not probably at the skill set to be demanding. And yet the owners are kind of like, yeah, it's okay. The agents are like, yeah, let's push for this, let's push. And then the players believe in it as well and think that they can do what they want. And football should never be that. If you haven't got the respect of the manager, you shouldn't be allowed to do what you're doing. And I think it's a massive problem in the game nowadays, and I think that there's no excuse for it. I think the owners need to be doing more and coming down on players when they haven't got, when the managers don't necessarily have respect of the players. The owners should be doing more to allowing their managers to be getting them players out, instead of sticking around and causing a fuss in the changing room. Because it's one thing having a player trying to push to get out of a club and not being allowed to, but then they're then affecting things Chinese whispers in the dressing room, getting little cliques in between players, and even more so than it used to be. And it's ruining the game. So loyalty is a massive thing nowadays. You don't really see it. So I'm going to have to go with pass for that. Like, you wouldn't see Roy Keane doing this. He wouldn't allow this sort of behaviour from players. Paul Ince wouldn't allow it. There's not enough characters now that's been pushed out of the game. And now, because of that, you're allowing more brattiness, more diva behaviour from people that are supposed to be role models for the youth coming up after them. They're sending the wrong message now. And the youth that are going to come up after them, it's going to get worse and worse until this changes. So loyalty for me is definitely gone, and it needs to come back, and it should come back. There's no excuse for it. So that is it, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. I had 16 categories for this, and I thought it was going to be a lot more level playing field, but this speaks volumes of how much problems and issues there are in modern football. I've got it 15-1 in terms of past football being better. That shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case, but it is. And I think a lot of people would agree with me on this. Even if they had a few more moderns in there, I feel like a lot of the past would win out. And that's a major problem. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd be glad to see people's take on this, because especially the younger lot that watch me, you might be more in favour of modern football. And I'm all up for debate. I'd love to hear it in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, even if they disagree with mine. It should be a discussion. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back soon in a bit.